Buonasera a tutti. Aspettiamo ancora un attimo che stanno arrivando persone. Good evening to everybody and buonasera a tutti. Questa sera è molto speciale perché presenteremo una conversazione tra due figure di primissimo piano nella cultura contemporanea. This evening is a very special evening here at the museum because we will present a conversation between two figures of contemporary culture of the utmost importance. Especially in our times of difficult climate change, we have a world which is in dire need of thinking together between art and science, between art and other fields such as agronomy, geography, and energy studies, and food. And this period is a special one for Torino in Piemonte because Torino is hosting Terra Madre. And Terra Madre, every 2 years, brings to our local context an enormous number of people from all over the world who are either farmers or have companies in the food industry and who think about issues related to a regeneration of the planet through food. I would like to also let you know that today's conversation between Edward Mukiibi, whom we'd like to welcome, who is, as you may know, the new president of the slow food movement worldwide, because our dear and beloved Carlo Petrini has decided to retire, and he is indeed full of energy, but in the second part of his life, let's say. So we will let him retire, and we praise and celebrate the arrival of a new figure. And in conversation with Edward Mukiibi will be Otobong Nkanga, who's back. Otobong is one of our most beloved artists and whose works have been in the collection of Castello di Rivoli for many years now. The first work, Tales of a Kola Nut, was presented and created for an exhibition around color in 2018, and thanks to the friends and benefactors of the Castello di Rivoli, we were able to acquire it, becoming one of the first European and worldwide museums, one of the first. I'm sure there are others who were able to include her work in the collections. Permanent collections are very important. Our works are unalienable, so it has nothing to do with issues around market or property, but it does have to do with issues around heritage and the patrimoine, the patrimonio, what in 100 years or in 50 years will be the story of 2009, 2010, 2018, 2022. That story is told through the artifacts that are in museums. And therefore, our role as a contemporary art museum is to build the past for the future. It's a very important role, and our collections are a large part of our work as museum directors and museum curators. And the person who will be leading this conversation is our great chief curator, Marcella Beccaria. We can also clap, why not? Why not? who has worked very closely with Otobong over the years, and who is now was the co-curator with me of the exhibition on the third floor of Castello di Rivoli, and is now working deeply on a book which will be coming out soon on the work of Otobong Nkanga. So last but not least, I would like to spend a few words on thanking, because thanking is a very important part of living, thanking. I would like to thank the audience who is here, and thank you for your patience in listening to a talk which is in English. But now we have two audiences. We have you here, and we have the audience that is watching while streaming. And the world of public events has changed after COVID. And we are in a kind of schizophrenic mode where we need to speak locally, but we are heard at the same time through streaming internationally and globally. So it has pushed us towards using more and more English in our public programs, but our education department has a wide array of programs that are solely in Italian for all audiences. Vorrei ringraziare il pubblico per essere qui oggi e la pazienza di ascoltare una conversazione in inglese. Ogni tanto forse qualche parola in italiano scapperà. Però vorrei anche ringraziare chi rende possibile i nostri programmi e quindi in primis la Regione Piemonte, che è il socio di maggioranza del nostro museo, ma anche la città di Torino e naturalmente la città di Rivoli per questo bellissimo edificio che ospita il museo. Desidero anche ringraziare le fondazioni che ci supportano, la Fondazione CRT, la Fondazione CRT per l'arte moderna e contemporanea, la Fondazione Compagnia di San Paolo, Intesa San Paolo e Gallerie d'Italia e per alcuni progetti anche specifici altre fondazioni. In particolare mi preme stasera menzionare la Fondazione CRC di Cuneo, perché assieme alla Fondazione CRC di Cuneo stiamo lavorando ad una nuova opera di arte pubblica di Otobong Nkanga che sarà a Bra, nella casa madre, diciamo, accanto all'Università di Slow Food di Racconigi, a Bra, nel centro, vicinissimo a un sundial, a una meridiana che piaceva molto a Otobong, ed è una scultura, ma è anche un oggetto, saranno anche oggetti di utilità, perché sono anche delle sedute ed è anche un giardino, e questo si inaugurerà prima della fine di quest'anno, poiché la Fondazione CRC compie quest'anno 25 anni e ha quindi voluto lavorare col Castello di Rivoli per realizzare delle nuove committenze. I think I've thanked everyone except for the team that set this whole thing up. So I would like to thank our public programs curator and digital contents curator, Giulia Coletti, and I would like to thank all the people that behind the scenes are working for these programs and making them possible. Thank you very much, and I would now like to invite to the stage Otobong Nkanga, I hope, and Edward Mukiibi. Otobong, would you like to sit here, maybe? And Eddie would like to sit there. And Marcella, would that be a good seat? Okay, so thank you very much and have a good conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen Christopher-Karjev, and welcome to the Castello di Rivoli tonight for this conversation with Edward Mukiibi and Otobong Nkanga. I don't want to steal too much time to the conversation, but if you allow me, I would like to read a few lines about your biographies, both amazing in different ways, and both of you are truly excellent in your fields. Edward Mukiibi is president of Slow Food, agronomist and social entrepreneur. He deals with education in the agriculture and gastronomic sectors and holds the role of executive director of Slow Food Uganda. Mukiibi was the promoter of Slow Food Gardens in Africa project and a central figure in the development of the Slow Food Network in Uganda. His commitment dates back to university. Since the second year, he has held relevant positions within his faculty, thus managing to defend and promote agriculture as a working sector. Later, to take his work to an even greater scale, Mukiibi founded Project DISC to develop agriculture in school. He has been a member of the Slow Food Executive Committee since 2012 and has been vice president of the association since 2014 until July 22. And Otobong Nkanga studied at the Obafemi University in Nigeria, at the École Nationale Supérieure des Beaux-Arts in Paris, at the Rijksmuseum Academy in Amsterdam, and was awarded a residency at the D8 in Berlin. Her works are present in the collections of numerous international institutions, including the Centre Pompidou Paris, Tate Modern London, Stedelijk Museum Amsterdam, Castello di Rivoli Museo d'Arte Contemporanea, and she has been exhibited in several places in the world. I guess you will pardon me if I won't mention them all. Among the many awards, actually, that Otobong has received, I think I can at least mention that she received a special mention on the occasion of the International Exhibition of the Venice Biennial, the 58th edition. She was awarded the prize for the best permanent installation on the occasion of the 14th Sharjah Biennial, and she won the prestigious Peter Weiss Prize and was awarded the Flemish Cultural Award for the Visual Arts. As before Karin Küsöbakarji mentioned, Otobong was just the protagonist of a major exhibition that just closed at the Castello di Rivoli, although the piece recently acquired is visible, so in case after the conversation, of course, anybody from the audience would like to go visit, you're welcome to do so. And the exhibition that we organized was held in collaboration with Villa Arson, Nice. So welcome to both of you. It's really a great honor today. I guess that in order to start the conversation, maybe I would just like to ask a brief question to Edward Mukiibi in order for us to be able to know a little bit more about your experience. And I understand that you first came to Turin in 2008, and that as new president of Slow Food, you have brought about the project of giving a new legal status to the Fondazione. So I understand now it's a Fondazione Partecipativa. And I guess it might be perhaps an interesting starting point for our conversation today, although apparently we started dealing with legal papers, but why not? Let's start with the theory in order to better understand the practice. What does this new legal status of Slow Food means exactly?
Slow Food was founded 36 years ago, the same year I was born. It was founded here in Italy, and it became an association which was based on membership. People pay the membership for the membership card to become part of the association. But since 2004, when Terra Madre was founded, the organization was opened up to new people from all over the world. And it has constantly become a grassroots movement that involves people who are not paying the membership, but they are doing a lot of work at the ground level, at the farm level, at the restaurant level, in the communities to change the food system from within, from the grassroots level. So over the years, Slow Food has evolved from a membership association to a strong grassroots movement that is present in 160 countries. But not all these countries, people are able to pay the membership. Sometimes the membership model doesn't work in one part of the world, but it works well in another part of the world, like in Europe. So in a bid to accept and welcome this complexity and also the openness and the inclusivity of the movement, we decided since 2017 in our International Congress in Chengdu to open up slow food movement, to open up to this reality, because food unites us all. Food does not discriminate. Eating does not discriminate. We all eat. There are people who are working day and night, indigenous communities, women in Africa, women in Latin America, youth from all over the world. But the old membership model could not open up to this reality. So because I'm also one of the people who joined Slow Food from the grassroots, from Terra Madre in 2008, I worked so much to open up this movement to this reality, to know that the whole world is diverse, and Slow Food is talking about diversity, and we are working to preserve this diversity, which is the wealth of the planet. So we had to open up to a new membership model, which is based on participation, that is open, inclusive, and recognize each and everyone's action, irrespective of your economic status, your social background, your geographical background, your ethnicity, your gender and sexual orientation. The movement opened up. So this is what the participation foundation means. And also for some of us to effectively enjoy the family of Slow Food, which is now global, we had to make each and every one of us feel comfortable to be part of the movement. And I'm really happy that because of the open-mindedness of the members of Slow Food and the welcoming spirit of this diversity, there was a general agreement that Slow Food needs to open up to this reality, such that many people can participate and be accommodated and work together for a good, clean, and fair food system. So this is what the new structure means. And this is, now we have a very diverse, inclusive board with half of the board women, and we have out of the 9 members of the new board, 7 are below the age of 40. So we are a young board, but also we maintain the connection to the old generation because we need guidance, we need to tap into this wisdom, but also all the members of the board, most of us come from the grassroots. And also we come from different areas. We have indigenous peoples from Latin America, and an indigenous woman on the board. We have Europeans, we have me from Africa, from a poor farming family. We have people from the different professions, and we have representatives of the young, and how we have managed to change the legal status to a participatory foundation where everyone's contribution is recognized. It doesn't matter if you're a producer, if you are a farmer, if you are an artist, if you are a trader, or if you're a consumer. Everyone can now easily associate and work within the slow food movement to regenerate our food system and also to bring life back to the planet.
I see. Thank you. And for Otobong, I guess, perhaps in order to start our discussion, since we are talking about collaborative projects, among the many collaborative projects that you have done, one that in particular, of course, has been bringing a very big impact in your own career, I imagine both as an artist and, of course, as a human being, not that there is a difference, but it's a big project, Carved to Flow. And perhaps you would like to just briefly address how this project started on the occasion of your participation to the Documenta 15 and how today it actually has become a very active farm in Nigeria that is taking very much of your energy and time, and of course working with your own family and then many other people.
Yeah, well, thank you for the invitation. And I'm really honored to be with you Mr. Mukiibi. And also thank you to Castello di Rivoli for opening up this platform for us to have this conversation. I mean, I remember as a kid, my mom, I think when we had, financial troubles, or when my father was no more, like one of the main things that I saw that really saved us was that we had a little land that we could plant pumpkin seeds or water leaf to be able to have food, at least have vegetables. And with that also, where my mother was working, there was a poultry, so you could have eggs. So at least as a kid, you get to realize that you just need a few things, but that you needed the nutrients, and you needed, the vegetables, you needed the proteins, you needed the minerals. And I've always been very much connected to that idea of what is a support system, and how can you create something that really supports, even if it's a small family, a village, but structures that make you feel that you can move on even in times of crisis. And so this thought has been a thought that I've been having for a long time, and it was one of the things that I wanted to do as an artist. And most times you hear a lot of artists that want to do a lot of things beyond art, and the main issue has always been like, oh, there's no money, or like you have a new space that is opened up, and then the main question is, how do you support that structure, and how do you support the ideas, but how do these ideas enter into the society? And so with Documenta, that was an opportunity, because I started looking at the statistics of how many people come to Documenta, and this was Documenta 14, and started understanding that this could be a platform to be able to think through or have conversations with people around soils, oils, economy, geographies, crisis, politics, also regeneration, a way of taking care, repair, and germination. There were all these things that were part of my thinking process. So in 2016, 2017, decided to do a project that would have a 3-phase project, since Documenta was in Athens and in Caso, to be able to make a soap. I think, yeah, we can, when it will come by, we'll see it. To make a soap that, 15,000 soaps that we sold in Caso, but the soap contained oils that were coming from specific geographies that produce oil for the world. So if we look at the Middle East, you have also not only plant oil, but mineral oil, crude oil, and all that. And if we look at the Mediterranean, Italy, for example, Greece, you have the olive oil, which also connects with Algeria, Tunisia. Then you have West Africa, which also produces palm oil, all these oils that are actually nutrients for the world, or coconut oil, cacao oil. So with this soap, we put all these different oils from these different geographies, but also connected it with charcoal. And it was important to be able to put these elements, because these elements were starting places to be able to talk about geographies that are nourishing the world, but at the same time, the same geographies that are going through crisis. So if we think of even Southern Europe at that point in time in 2008, with the Lehman Bank falling, to 2015 with the movements of the war and people moving from Syria and all the Middle Eastern area, then the ecological and economical crises that have come from colonization till to today, we then see the kind of disrupt it has done to farmlands, to places that used to be very nutritive, to places that have been strived of oxygen. And so for me, it was important to be able to use this element, the soap, as a way of a thinking process. But not only a thinking process, but that it can generate an economy for a support system. And with this economy, the third phase, we opened up an art space in Athens, because the art space in Athens, we're taking about 60% of our oils from Athens. So it's a way of thinking about extractions and way of repairing or returning in a different form what you've taken out of a place. And in Nigeria, we're able to get a land in which we started now farming and really reflecting on ways of farming that are very much organic, really thinking about the seed, really starting from a place of reflecting on the soil and the quality of the food that you eat. And so, and also how we're going to start understanding what the community needs through the systems of farming, the systems that are linked to like solar energy, water, and from there start bringing that into the community. So these are it's a very slow process, and that's why I can understand. Not only are we talking about slow food, but you're talking about slow process. So it's very, for me, it's very interesting to be able to listen to you or even to ask you the question about in the acceleration of like things that are happening in the world. We see sometimes the devastation of a land in a split of a second. How do we work with a place that the speed of things or the way things are changing, how does that affect the slowness or let's say the way that we're even thinking of food and food security? So I'm just wondering how you think about that, because this has been a big question in my head. So I'm throwing the ball to Edward. I think like extreme weather, but there's also economy. It's not just the weather, it's just the different kinds of crises. There's also terrorism. There's all kinds of things that are in different kinds of lands that are affecting farmers, affecting the kinds of food we eat, corporations, the way they build and produce and also distribute food. And how that eliminates the kind of economy of a place. So for me, it's super interesting to understand like how does one combat this with like slow food? How is one thinking for the future actually?
Yeah. Actually, this is that's a very valid question, and also like I said, slow food has evolved over the years, and for so many years we have started building communities, starting from one individual farmer in the rural area, talking about the future of food in that community, talking about the biodiversity we have in the community, talking about the challenges which are locally affecting farmers in the communities. And we actually, it looks happening. And also these crises are a reminder that the food system on which we are dependent on is a very fragile one. It reminds us that we cannot continue to depend on a system that has built to benefit the corporations, to build an economic system that if it's just disrupted in one part of the world, people in another part of the world suffer. So this system is not dependable anymore. And it's now very, very clear that we cannot trust this kind of system anymore. So for so many years, we've been working to encourage smallholder farmers to build communities, because a community is very, very, it brings this sense of belonging and also sense of trust among the people who are working. If you're a farmer and you are working in isolation, the work feels so heavy. I felt that when I was starting to work with the communities, as a person who has lived on the farm and grown crops in a mixed traditional African way, I worked in a project when I was in my late days at the university, and this project was promoting monocultural hybrid based systems, and it was promoting agrochemicals. And farmers were encouraged to convert their farms to get more and more yields at a very fast rate. But it was so costly. And we were promised that this maize, which farmers were supposed to plant, can withstand the drought and also the challenging African conditions. So farmers took up this maize. I was one of the students in the university who were selected to participate in this project. But in 2007, just 1 month after planting this maize and after it grew to the knee height, slightly above the knee height, the drought came and farmers terribly lost. And this maize was supposed to be grown in a monocrop, so farmers had to clear their land of other crops and grow this maize. And in the end, farmers were disappointed. They had never had 100% loss of the crop. And I had to go and evaluate the project. I felt the pain they were going through because I come from a family of small farmers. And I saw the damage which this kind of a fast-growing culture, an industrial system can bring to individual farmers. But then I quit this project and I started working with communities, with individual farmers, to retract our steps back to the traditional African farming systems, to a system that respects the African diversity and also the complexity of the African environment. But it was a lot of work, and I was alone doing this, trying to correct my past mistakes of working in this terrible project, until I found Slow Food. When I was invited to Terra Madre, this is when I found that it's a whole world of people coming together to make a positive change in the food system. This is the sense of community which can help build solidarity, build trust, and also build confidence in people like the farm which you started in Nigeria. This connection, alone you may feel like it's a lot of work, but connecting with other farmers, other people who are going through the same struggle of producing food that is good, clean, and fair, respecting the environment and working without damaging the environment. Once you connect, there is this sense of connection and also social support to each other. But also it's very clear now that many countries, many people, many communities are starting to think locally, to think about building and also strengthening local food supply chains, local smallholder farms. And I'm seeing it, I've been moving the last month in August in many parts of Uganda, seeing what is happening. The government also trying to map smallholder farmers and to map areas where farmers can sell crops locally, because we cannot depend anymore on the global supply chain that is highly controlled by a few individuals interested in the profits. So these small farms which people create in different areas of the world, they look like small drops. But once we build the connection, the sense of community around these farms, these small drops become a pool. And putting these pools together, we will have an ocean, so we can withstand the shocks of the current global system, and we can regenerate and create a completely new system that is based on local supply chains, and that can guarantee that even the smallest and the poorest family on the planet can have its own food from within the community.
I think it's very interesting what you mentioned about the concept of slowness, because of course in the concept of slow food, we are used to think that it's a very positive thing, and of course it is, but what is the vision in terms of time? How long exactly it might take to regenerate up to the point in which we can actually see the positive outcome of this very long process? Because I do understand also from Otobong recounts, the daily life actually of what's happening, and what you were telling me before about the life of the farm. It's a very long process, of course. In our span of life, will we see it?
Yeah. When we talk about slowness, actually also in slow food, we are saying that it's a matter of urgency. We need to take an urgent action. It doesn't mean we need to buy and take a lot of time to act. We need to act now. Actually, we needed to act yesterday, because these issues are happening so fast. When we talk about slowness, we mean mostly responsibility. We need to watch our steps. We may move extremely super fast in the wrong direction, and that is not good. But we can take steps, we can watch our steps. It doesn't mean that we need literally mean to move slow. They need to connect regenerative farms on the planet. They need to create farms which regenerate the planet, the food system. Is an urgent need. We need to do it quickly. We need to do it super fast. But we need to do this while watching what is our footprint on the planet. We need to understand what is the footprint of our actions on the social, environmental, and cultural well-being of the societies which are involved in the production and the handling of food. So it's not a matter of moving very slow. Of course, our logo is a snail, but also a snail means a lot of things. We need to leave a strong and a positive impact on the planet, on the societies, on the people who will eat the food we produce. We need that impact, and it should be a positive impact. This is what slowness means. It means we need to act urgently in the right direction. That is the slowness of slow food. So the step you have taken is a step in the right direction. Now we need to accelerate that action. We need that connectivity. We need to encourage you.
Yes, but you know, one of the things that I also noticed, like my brother it's my brother that is taking care of the farm and everything, and I think maybe it's really in relation to maybe the continent, or maybe Nigeria, or maybe the part of Nigeria I am in, or the farm is, which is
Where's the farm?
It's in the southern part of Nigeria, close to Cameroon. So we are a Ibibio people, but at the same time we're rainforest and river people. So we get a lot of rain, we get a lot of fish. It's really green, right? But one also realizes that one of the things that we found that was quite missing was to be able to identify even the plants that we have, you know. So we are looking, when you're looking for something that will be able to protect your plant or your crop, so the kind of systems, like the different systems for planting, where you have a plant that would protect certain insects, and we cannot even identify what plants locally, or that we call weeds, that might do that job for the plant. So the way of like...
Sorry, Otobong, why can you not
You cannot identify, because in a way what we're finding difficult is to be able to have almost like an encyclopedia of plants, to know
database.
What is the weed and what is this, why do we even call this a weed? Because when we're farming, we're uprooting and taking off things. But maybe, and you know, I'm discussing with my brother, we're like, maybe this plant is beneficial to plant it next to our tomatoes, but we don't know what it is, first of all. And we do not know.
So can I interrupt you a second?
Yeah.
Can slow food help?
Yes, yes.
In which role? But then we continue with the story.
You know, one of the main three pillars of slow food is education.
Yes.
Another one is biodiversity. The third, if I can say it, is advocacy or influencing policies. But I will, for this case, I will focus a lot on education.
Yes, I think that's crucial.
You know, man has, or the human being has, for so many years, created a relationship with the ecosystem. And traditionally, we have learned the many different uses of the plants, animals, insects, and everything that is surrounding us. There is a use for every plant in the ecosystem. But our generation has been raised in the system of agriculture that does not respect this diversity, in a system that does not respect this traditional knowledge. A system, I was educated as an agronomist, but it took me so much time to understand how to work with all this integration, because I was educated in a system that tells me you have to buy a chemical that is produced in United States, spray it on the weeds in Africa, what you call weeds, and eliminate them and remain with your crop. Most of these weeds are actually foods. Yes. Most of these weeds are edible. Most of these weeds are repellents to insects that would attack our crops. And we live in the tropics in a system where the symbiotic relationships between plants is very strong. And we live in a system where animals have worked in an integrated way to support the plant growth. But our education has eroded all this knowledge from our minds, and we have lost this wealth of knowledge. So slow food, what we do, one of the things we do, in 2010, we created, as African leaders who became part of the Slow Food Network through Terra Madre, we came together and thought about all these issues. The loss of biodiversity, which is rampant on the African continent, first of all because of climate change, but also because of the one-size-fits-all kind of agriculture that it eliminates this wealth, which many times is part of our food. And then we looked at all the loss of traditional knowledge. So we created the Slow Food Gardens in Africa project, the 10,000 Gardens in Africa project. Why? Because we wanted to use it as an education tool to understand, for many African communities, many children in schools, to understand what is the environment around us in relation to food, plants, land, soil. And we do a lot of trainings, and also we do a lot of learning exchanges, and we document all these plants at the community level. This is the learning which we need to make. We need to deconstruct the education we got when it comes to relationship between us and our environment. It's still possible. There are still people who have this knowledge. This is the power of connection. When we connect a school to a community of women who are farming in a natural way, the children come to understand this knowledge. When we organize, because in this project in Slow Food, we organize the seed fairs, we organize the biodiversity tours and biodiversity fairs. People get to cross-pollinate this knowledge and to transform this knowledge to those who may need it. Of course, we all need it on the African continent because this is the only way out. And those who already have this knowledge but have no opportunities of sharing this knowledge. And this is the meaning of Terra Madre. An event like Terra Madre, there is a lot of learning. Looking at the display of biodiversity in Pakodora now, you see a lot of different things which you can never imagine that you see them every day. You can't imagine that it has a use, but somebody has placed it there with a description of how it's used. This is the free knowledge share. This is the free education that we are working for in the slow food movement.
Wonderful. I've come up to ask the reverse question, which is, how can you help them? How can art help slow food achieve their goal, in your view?
I think that, with art, at least art is meant to open up a place where people can meet and where people can think and where people can discuss and where people can think, get involved in doing things together somehow. For me, if I have to think about it, I think already, like with the Documenta project, that was already one step of like connecting between places of like agriculture, art, thinking of soils and economy. And we have many artists that are working in that way of really thinking of places of extraction, really unearthing ways of like looking at the world. And I think that complementary notion of sometimes you have people on the ground, you have the farmers, you have those that are really working on things, and artists allows for you to frame things, to kind of heighten or amplify certain things that are going wrong or certain things that are going right or certain ways of like thinking. So I think with art we're able to um, um, bring together ways in which we can amplify things, that we can even connect certain groups of people together. Because when I look at art, it's one of those places that you can move through many, many medias. So you can be someone that is working with, soil, but with that soil you can sculpt with it. With that you can also plant. With that you can work with a farmer. So you actually connect people in ways that are unimaginable. I remember my mother saying to me when I wanted to study architecture, and she was like, architecture is too rigid, you're going to study. Why don't you like art, you're going to do, I said, she told me you can do anything with art. You can bring in biology, you can bring in your architecture that you're interested in, you can do everything within that space. And I think that's one thing I took with me in thinking that, yes, that there isn't a limit, there isn't a border. It doesn't just end as a painting on a wall, which is one of the things that it could be. But it can also be like someone like Lauren Bonn, that she bought the right to water in California, and that water becomes the commons. So it doesn't belong to big corporations, but by buying that water and buying different sources of water, it then belongs to the people. Or someone like Newton Harrison that died not long ago, that really opened up places of like thinking about geographies and really pointing out the relationship of ecology and art. So you're having many thinkers, many pioneers that are linking the world of many worlds to the exhibition space and beyond the exhibition space. So it becomes almost like when we look at even a farming system, that you could have farmers, you can have artists, you could have philosophers, and all these things enriching each other. So I think when we are working, or when you're thinking about with Terra Madre, that we can even add more artists,
Exactly.
add more artists that, that can come in to just think through thinking processes, that can open up other ways of like looking, that can connect with farmers, do projects. There's another artist I wanted to talk about, which is Luigi Coppola. I don't know if you know him, from Lecce. And he's also working a lot with like people coming into the Lecce region, and at the same time with farming and theater and thinking of ways that different seeds can evolve with its soil, but also seeing that there are many migrants coming in that have the knowledge of farming. They then enter into the systems of farming within the region, and also regenerate the region, because a lot of young people left and those lands are left fallow. So by these people that have this knowledge and might not have the job, might not have the possibility to do what they are good at doing, by joining these projects, they're able to regenerate the region. So I think, and this is an artistic project at the same time that it is a farming project, a project linked to seeds, a project linked to communities. So that's what I think, that if we think in an expanded way, that there's that possibility of thinking, and I think artists have the possibility to be very creative and think out of the box.
Yeah.
So, even in the process, actually, out of which you approached the exhibition that we did here, and that's what I wanted to get to.
Yes.
You were really, since the very beginning, like really curious about, all the mails and all the questions were, what does it grow? What is growing there? What do people eat? Can we go to the land? I mean, the entire exhibition process, somehow the making of the exhibition has not been about bringing things
Yes.
out of an alien place, but actually starting from where we are, asking questions to us, traveling, taking
Yes.
time to actually go visit people, go and visit some farmers. And so that has been, the outcome of the exhibition has
Yeah.
been indeed something that was very much embedded in Otobong's knowledge and understanding and curiosity and respect out of the land. So.
Yeah, I think for me it was something that it was important for me to think about what is generated from this region, what are the local products that are being made, and how are the farmers coping with the economical shifts, so there were many questions in my head, and I think it starts with those questions, and then you start going into the land. We met the guy that produces different sorts of lavender, and I never imagined that there were all these kinds of lavender. And he's just in the Piemonte region, and producing one of the best lavenders around. And so you start learning, and as an artist, I think that's what is incredible, that when you enter a place, I don't want to enter a place by only reading a book. I want to enter a place by knowing the people that are shaping the ground and the land we live in, the people that are making the food that I eat, the people that are shaping the politics of a place, the ecology of a place. And I think that's very important to and from there I can make a painting if I want to, but I can also work with the people to understand how they work, which also helps me to think about how I can work or how we can work, let's say in Nigeria, when I go to Brazil, that you're actually learning from different kinds of ways of treating the world or the land with love and care. And that's the crucial thing.
And also, if I'm to add from there, also the intersection between food and art is historical. And also, it's very important, and it comes in many different ways, from production of the food and also to how nature designs things, how things appear in real life, how plants in the natural environment stay with each other. This is how nature organizes these things, and this is an act of art. And also how farmers design their fields. You talked about this beautiful garden of lavender, how farmers design the fields, the gardens, studios of art, because it involves a lot of this knowledge. And also looking at the cooking, we also look at the kitchen as a studio of art, because food is art and cooking is art. Creating and generating all these recipes involves a lot of creativity, and creativity is a very big component of art. So, but also looking at artists, they play a very important role in amplifying this knowledge and making people understand the real meaning of food. Because through art we see the different pieces that you can come up with. Could also help rediscover the lost knowledge, the knowledge on the crops, the knowledge on the biodiversity which you have, the knowledge of the lost relationships which we have, could be well understood and presented in form of art. We were talking about the loss of knowledge on how to use these plants. This is a very big statement which could be expressed in art, and also people will be aware that we are having we have this gap in our society, and this can come up pretty well. Also, I following the history of food and also the history of agriculture, I have understood that art has always been expressed as a tool to pass on knowledge between generations. We see also, like in Uganda, I've also visited other rock paintings. They are not just paintings on the wall which were painted 5,000 years ago. These show us what people used to eat, the recipes they used to use in the cooking, or the products, the biodiversity they used to have in this environment. And when we look at these pieces, we get to understand that even if there is no more lake or no more river in this area, but fish made a very big component of the people who lived in this area before. So art has this power of...
That's fascinating. You mean the storytelling part?
The storytelling part and the educational part.
There is storytelling in your work, for sure. And
The power of education. I've followed, I've been looking at this piece up there. The power of connectivity. We are talking about connecting and putting knowledge together. The piece up there is showing this power of connectivity and also the power of linking one community to another. We can use this power to educate ourselves. We can use this power to share recipes, to share motivation, to share ideas, and also to understand that in every center or every node of this connectivity, there is life. So art plays a very important role in the education, but also in the expression of things which, in our food system, things which would be rather hard for communities to express. The work which you see you can see what the struggles of a community in Brazil, the struggles of a community in Philippines or in Uganda, bringing that to a visual piece which people can see and understand with your beautiful skills of poetry, create a lot of awareness and education to the people who may not have been aware of this situation. So for me, I cannot underestimate the central role of art in regenerating our recipes and also showcasing our culinary traditions, especially some of us who are coming from places where the cuisine is not well developed and not well understood, because it's based on the local knowledge which has not been documented into an encyclopedia or into specific cookbooks. But I'm pretty sure that with art, we can create visibility for all these issues and raise awareness. That's why it's important, like you said, maybe in the next Terra Madre to create a special area for food and art. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, when I think about even our cuisine, when you travel to different parts of the continent, or, when I'm in Brazil, for example, Brazil, you're there and you're looking at certain elements, and I'm looking at the variety of peppers, like just how crazy it is. And I'm seeing that the soil is the same as like from where I come from, but I'm seeing the diversity is like so heightened, like on another level. And then you're having fruits that you're eating that you're like, from things that you use to dye your clothes, but the same thing are medicinal things. The same thing is food. So there's some things that are just going through from, like, it can work for the whole body and work beyond the body. And I'm thinking of that, like, I'm looking at something, I'm like, I can use that to paint. I can use that as makeup. I can use that to heal a part of my body. And I can use that to actually, cook with. And one of the things that that I get to realize more and more is also that when you talk about the diversity of the food and the range in which we can experiment with our food. And you also see, like, in certain places that kind of experimentation seems to have been arrested, that it varies, but it's not like you're going beyond it. And the fusion of things, like when you think of Brazil or West Africa or even Central Africa, you would see that when you have a cook from this region and a cook from that region with the same material, it will be completely two different food. So I'm very much interested in that place of how the same kind of plants, the same kind of seeds, the same kind of oils can actually be extracted differently and be done or made differently. So it's that when we talk about the cross-pollination and that you talk about, it's so interesting to see how, but for me, I've never experienced Terra Madre. I've never been to one of the events. So I'm really curious to see, Tomorrow, yeah. So I'm really curious to see how that idea, how the ideas or how it works and how it functions, yeah. But one thing I wanted to add was that when you were talking about, for me, I look at also the ways that the land was documented through colonial times. how you would have these books of the dissecting of the seeds, the dissecting of the plant. You have these books that you would see the drawing. The artist was so crucial, actually, in the ways in which that knowledge was disseminated in the scientific field. So you would see drawings. The artist actually traveled, sometimes was on mission with the mission to be able to document everything through watercolors, through drawing, through photography. So we've seen, like you said, that kind of accompaniment of the artist over time, even with the mixtures of paint. Like some artists would want a certain color and then would actually find a way to get the lapislazuli or a certain seed to be grounded to a certain color and then work with scientists to make it happen. And then some of these things would enter the food in coloring the food or and would enter into other fields because it has been made for a specific thing but spreads around. So for me, I think from what you said, yeah, it made me think of this and to add to that ways of like, and maybe it makes me even think of maybe a possibility of a work because of the lack to be able to document or to be able to kind of archive in a way things that we're noticing on the farm that we don't know.
Yeah.
And what is it? You know?
And to raise these questions through art and
Yes.
then finding answers. I will give you an example. In Uganda, Slow Food Uganda, we launched a very small book to document the lost traditional crops, the very important ones. And some of them are still seen in the community, so it was easy to see them and draw them. But we worked with an art student in the university, in Makerere University. She's now in US, who was part of the slow food movement and now is still part of the slow food movement in US. She would sit, because we did the whole mapping process of what we cannot see anymore. And she would sit with old women in the community and they described one edible insects which people used to eat in the past, and they described all the gastronomic relationships with man and with humans and all these, the stories, how it's cooked. But they described how this insect looked like in the past.
Because there are no photographs,
There are no photographs, the insects are not there, but she described everything. They described everything. And then she went and started doing the drawings. Then she brings to the women and say, was it like this? Then they say, yeah, it looked like that. That is how this insect, the flying termites, they looked like. And then we recreate like more of this image and then put in our educational, school educational activities on food, talking about the transition from like many sources of protein in the African traditional society, including insects, mushrooms, and pulses, worms, and all these kind of things. The image came out because women said, yes, it looks like that. That is how it looked like. And now we can use it. It's in this book. And this is how powerful art can be also to rediscover the lost heritage when it comes to food. And also to understand how ingredients look like, or even when we cannot see them anymore, but through art we can rediscover this gastronomic heritage. So this is how powerful art is in the food industry. Like I said before, also the kitchen is a studio. That involves a lot of creativity, a lot of creation of different things involving different colors. I learned about your work with the color. Yes. A lot of people are not aware about this work in the food world, but it carries a lot of heavy educational information when it comes to food.
Maybe Otobong would like to briefly describe
I
this
think
very
you
important
need to tell this
project.
story.
Yes.
This is a story of decolonizing food system, decolonizing the cola nut. So it's very important that this story is told. This story, people get to know about this story. So I will be happy to leave this stage after you say something about this story, this work.
Well, I think I would talk about the social life of the plant. And I think it's important to bring that aspect, that it's not just a thing that we eat, but a thing that is really embedded in our social lives, the things that are connected to rituals. And the kola nut, I think, is a very fine example of that. So one of the things that I realized within African attire, especially West African attire, because the kola nut actually is a nut that, it's not a nut, but they call it kola nut, I don't know why. But it looks like a pod of cacao. So within that pod, you would have the kola nut in it. It comes from also the family of like Theobroma, and if you look at the word Theobroma, it means like the source of life. Theo and Broma, source, and God, the source from God. And within West African traditions, this tree was never to be cut, never, ever, because it's a tree linked with the gods. So it's a tree that grows up to about 75 meters. It produces kola nut, which gives energy. So it's one of those energy-giving nuts, like we could talk about mate, guarana, but kola nut is top. You find it from Senegal all the way to the Central Africa, the region. There are two types, kola nitida, kola acuminata, but we also have another kola called beta kola. And beta kola is an antibiotic. It's not the same family, but it's still called a kola. It's extremely bitter. When you eat it, it's so bitter, but afterwards you get an aftertaste of a certain kind of sweetness. From where we come from, we have the kola nut trees. And the way we work with the kola nut trees, it's used for ceremonies. For when you give birth to a child, it's given within the community or the people that visit you. You share a kola nut. You always say you break a kola nut together. The kola nut is used for contracts, so you don't even have to sign on paper. But when you break a kola nut and you've agreed on something, that kola nut seals it. The kola nut, if a friend comes, like you come, Edward, you come to my house, and I give you a kola nut and you refuse it, I know that I can't trust this man. I'm like, okay, if he cannot share a kola nut with me, that means he does not trust me. So by the time we share that kola nut, we know that we can start speaking truth to each other. So it's a way of gauging your visitor also. It's a way also during ceremonies, death, birth, a way of connecting to the gods, a way of connecting to people around you. But the kola nut during colonial times was also something that was exported to South America. Also during the enslavement of the Africans that were taken out of the continent. And a lot of the kola nuts were also put in the hair and taken out to Brazil. And that's how we can find kola nut in Brazil. But that kola nut was also linked to specific rituals. And those rituals involved the kola nut. So you couldn't leave without your kola nut. So it was very important in a way that it entered South America, and then it entered the Americas. And one of the things about kola nut is that it gave so much energy that you could work. You don't need to drink water. It kind of killed the thirst. So you can imagine on the boats what was used to be able to keep you through that journey was kola nut. One of the things that you would eat it and it will kill your hunger. It will also reduce your feelings for drinking water. But we also see that the kola nut entered into America. So when we think of coca and cola, split it in two. America was formed by the African and the South American to be able to create that Coca-Cola that we are all drinking. So the coca, if we think of it, of the coca leaves for cocaine, and that you can take out. and the cola from the African continent formed the new world and the new products and the new kind of addictions that we have. But these are two important energy boosting, like hyper energy boosting elements put together. So, but it wasn't a drink at first. It was really a medication. So you can imagine someone dying on his bed, and then you give them Coca-Cola. I don't know.
Just right there, because the first recipe for combining coca from the coca leaves, which is which is like a psychedelic, or it's a leaf which is used in Colombia when you're worshiping, traditionally used in worshiping and spirituality, and the cola nut, which has a very strong cultural connection to
yes.
the Western Central African community. The first recipe also was involved, was by the communities.
Yes.
But then later on appropriated and completely became chemical.
Yes.
Like you cannot find coca leaf and cola nut in the current Coca-Cola which is on the market.
Except in Brazil.
So now, because everything is chemical now.
In Brazil, you have the Coca-Cola of Brazil that has still the noise of the cola.
It's very difficult to have this clearly. That's why also Slow Food launched a cola nut presidium, which is a biodiversity conservation project that conserves also the cultural and social traditions that are connected to a product. So we are working with many communities of farmers or producers of cola nut in Sierra Leone, just to preserve the traditions and also the gastronomic heritage of this product in the lives of the communities which have preserved this biodiversity for so long. So that is the strong connection, and also how art can help enlighten the minds of people and also create awareness and create education, which is very important in regenerating the food systems.
But I think that aspect of like the erasure, that means like when we look at a lot of the fast foods or the structures that take, like for example, the corn that was taken out of Mexico, you just take one element and you plant it, and you forget that that element is not just an element, but that element has a deep connection to other elements, to other systems, to the sun, to the moon, to the soil, and to everything that is growing around it. And not only that, but to the spiritual practices of a place. So when you realize, when I'm looking at a lot of the foods that end up being packaged in a certain way, the erasure of history, the erasure of a connection to a community, the erasure to the indigenous practices of a people, of a community, becomes the norm. And so by the time you're buying, let's say your popcorn, or even a corn that you're eating, you have no link to that history. You have no link to the source of where it started from, or even if we don't know the source, but at least to the practices that come with that. So if we're thinking of the drink like what, the Coca-Cola drink, that erasure to the practices of like the region, to the practices of the African connection, becomes important to erase, and you just serve the product. And for me, I think this is one of the struggles that we're having with, not only in thinking about slow food or thinking about the slowness of things, but in ways we can still revive certain relationship and to the land, which is not only about the products we're eating, but the ways that we perform rituals, the ways that we connect to the other, because that connectivity allows us to restore, to regenerate, and to maintain, and to share, and to grow. But once that is cut off, and I see that a lot with especially within the African continent, and also in Asia, in some parts of Africa, South America, we see that really has affected the ways that we could have grown with the knowledges and built also other systems of existence.
And that's definitely what slow food means. And that's what slow food stands for. And that's where also we need the central role of art in bringing out this message and the communication to the public. Because art is interesting and it draws so many people and also draws a lot of attention. So I want to thank you for that point which you made, and also for that remark, because it reminds us all that food should not just be a product, but food is nature, food is spirituality, food is traditions, food is culture, and all the other things which are connected to food.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Because we have been talking about food, and I guess it's almost dinner time.
Yes.
So I guess before getting to my last question, that would be, what are you gonna have for dinner tonight? Are there any questions from the audience? Karen, do you have any questions?
No, I think your last question is wonderful. What are you going to have for dinner tonight? I'm asking both of you. What do you think? What do you imagine you're having for dinner tonight?
For tonight, I'm going to meet a group of people from all over the world, and they are bringing all these small pieces of food they have prepared in Terra Madre together. So I imagine it's going to be a buffet of all the cultures and traditions from all over the world. And these are the former students of the University of Gastronomic Sciences, where I also, it's in Polenzo here in Piedmont, where I also attended or went. And I'm sure you've visited the university, have you?
The what?
The University of Gastronomic Sciences.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
At least I did that.
So I'm going to enjoy what the alumni or the former students have prepared today from their different areas. So I can't imagine what it is, but I'm pretty sure it's
Diverse.
good food. Yes.
It sounds exciting.
And what do you imagine?
I follow you because I'm following you today.
Yes, but what do you imagine?
What do I imagine? I imagine something light, something fresh, not too heavy, and something that is super nourishing. Now, I don't know what it could be, but you know, we're in Italy, so there's a huge possibility of good food.
Well, you're going to have a very traditional Piedmontese meal.
And
Okay.
by the way, Otobong is an excellent cook. Because when Federica La Medica and I visited to work on the exhibition and the catalog, she definitely treated us
With great
in a
food.
very generous way.
Fabulous. Okay.
Thank
Well
you.
then, thank you very
so much.
much.
Thank you.